let's talk about how you vet a potential mineral buyer. So this is not really about how to find a mineral buyer or who do you sell your minerals to, but rather to how do you figure out if you're selling to a person or company that you feel comfortable with and that it's not scammy or there's no red flags. So let's go through that. This is kind of important because everybody and their dog buys mineral rights, it seems like. There are so many companies, especially like I live in Texas, and there are a lot of companies that buy minerals just in my city, in my area, certainly throughout Texas and in most of the oil and gas producing parts of the country. So just because you have an offer doesn't mean that it's your best offer or that this company might be the best one to sell to. So let's go through some different things that you can do in order to see how legitimate this company is. First, do they have a website? Because everybody has a website nowadays. So if they don't even have a website, that's a huge red flag. But if they do have a website, that doesn't mean that it's all clear, because everybody can make a website these days. It's super easy. Even if you don't have the skills to make a website yourself, you can hire somebody to do it. So just because you have a website doesn't mean that it's a legitimate, ethical company. So how do you actually tell if it's a legitimate, ethical company? And I think that it's subjective. You really just have to dive into everything that you can and just make your own judgment based on what you see. So for their website, is it just a simple one-page website? It's basically like a brochure and something that anybody can put up in a couple of days? Or is it an extensive website where they're really invested in what they do? On their website, they should have a company address. You can look and see, is that in an actual office building? Is it somebody's home? It's actually not a big deal if it's somebody's home. Like, I work out of my home, so my business address is not some corporate building. And that's true of a lot of buyers. You also have people that are not as invested in it. They don't put their business address as their home address if they're working from home. They instead are using a virtual office, and that's okay too. They're probably just trying to protect their privacy, but it's kind of one more layer that removes them from you. I don't know, depends how you feel about it. So you decide how you feel about that. The bigger companies will probably have an office suite or an office building, really big companies. You can also look at the Better Business Bureau. Now, I used to have an account with the Better Business Bureau, but it was $800 a year. And so I don't have it active right now, but it's still there and there's still reviews and people can go and post more reviews. So you can still see some of my reputation from that. And there are other companies that maybe the Better Business Bureau doesn't even know about them, or they might have registered with the Better Business Bureau and have reviews too. And that's just something else that might help you feel a little bit better, because if something goes sideways, then you have that as a resource because the Better Business Bureau is aware of it and they're able to contact that company. It's also nice to look for reviews. Not every company is going to have reviews. When a company works in an office building, like say they have an office suite or a whole building, then Google allows you to create a Google My Business page and it will have Google reviews. I used to have a Google My Business page, but what I didn't realize is that you can't have a home office for that. And so Google took it down. And with it came all of my really hard-earned reviews. So you won't see that. You'll see my reviews on the Better Business Bureau. You'll see some on my website, but you won't see it on Google. So you just have to decide how you feel about that. If it makes you feel comfortable to work with a big company that has their own building, they have a Google My Business page, they've got all these reviews, if that makes you feel better, then, absolutely go that way, because you need to feel really good about this. Another thing to look at is their experience level. Have they bought minerals before? Are they somebody who was in real estate and decided to get into minerals and they're just flying by the seat of their pants and trying to figure it out? Now, I've been there. Like years ago when I first started doing this, I didn't really know what I was doing. I had like a friend that I bought minerals with, and together we figured it out, and we hired a landman and lawyers and things when we needed. So everybody starts somewhere. But it's good to know if this is a company that is around and experienced with different kinds of issues that just come up as just the normal course of business. Or are they kind of the fly by the night, open one day and close the next, and if your deal goes south, which none of my deals have ever gone south, but if your deal goes south, then what recourse do you have? So it's good to see if they have some experience. And there's a few different ways to check on this. Like in Oklahoma, there's a website called okcountyrecords.com. I'll link it below. And you can type in the name of the business that you are thinking of selling your minerals to. Like for us, I would just go to okcountyrecords.com. And in the box, the default search is for all counties. Now, they don't have all the counties in Oklahoma, but they have a majority. So it's still a good search. So I would just type in like Blue Mesa Minerals, for example. And you can see that there's literally pages of deeds from Blue Mesa Minerals. So you can tell that I have bought minerals. You can also see that I haven't sold them. Like I'm not a buyer who flips minerals. I don't get somebody under contract and then go find a buyer so that I can flip it that way because I don't have money. That's not me. I keep everything that I buy. And so looking through the deed records is a good way to do some due diligence on the buyer that you're thinking about selling to. In Texas, Texas has a website called texasfile.com, and it costs $5 to do a global search across all 255 counties. If you don't want to pay $5, then there's kind of another route you can go. You can look at the tax roll data. And so if you go to mineralholders.com, without an account, you can still do a search. And you can see that Blue Mesa Minerals owns minerals throughout Texas. So it's good to just make sure that if your minerals are in Texas, that your buyer is experienced in buying minerals in Texas, because Texas has specific rules about what belongs on the deed. Now, if your buyer's from somewhere else, and as long as they know what the rules are in Texas, that's fine too. I mean, I have minerals in 10 or 12 states, and I generally know what is required in all of the states that I buy in. So it's just something that you might want to look into. The other things that you could do are a little bit more common sense. Like, how do you feel when you talk to the person? If it's a company, you might be talking to one or more people that work in their land department or their acquisition department, and they might be helping you gather your documents and kind of holding your hand through the process. So how do you feel in talking to them? Do they treat you with respect? Do they answer all of your questions? How much trust is there? Do you have any bad feelings? Are there any red flags? An example of a red flag would be maybe that they want you to sign the deed before they send you the funds. Now, that's I also know that there's lots of companies that do have you sign a deed and then they pay you afterwards. So that's not necessarily a red flag, but I've also seen it done in ways in which I'm like, I don't like that. So it's subjective. The other thing that I see sometimes is there's a tremendous time pressure that some companies will put on mineral owners to sell. And you shouldn't be pressured to sell. You really need to feel good about the decision of selling your minerals, first of all, and who you're selling them to, and the process that you're using. So if somebody's putting time pressure on you, just take that as a red flag. Now, when I submit an offer, I usually give 1 week, and that's not very much time, but it can also be renewed. As long as the price of oil and gas hasn't changed, there's nothing changing, they can come back to me in a week and say, hey, I need more time to think about this. And I'm like, no problem, I'll give you another offer. It'll be the same amount, I'm just gonna extend the time. The reason that I do 1 week is because I got myself in a bad situation once when I gave somebody an offer, and like literally like a couple of days later, the price of oil, this was like during the pandemic, the price of oil just like hit rock bottom. It just plummeted to like nothing. So then that was really bad. And so I never wanted to be in that position again. So I no longer give like 30-day offers. I give 1 week with, the option of having an extension. Another thing you want to look at is, are they telling you exactly how much they're going to pay you? We give offers for an exact amount. And if during the title search we find that there's some problem, then we may have to go back and adjust it, but that's actually never happened in all the minerals that I bought. It's in my contract that it can happen just because it could happen, but I've never seen it happen. So you should know what they're going to pay you. Some mineral buyers are paying per net mineral acre or per net royalty acre, and they'll tell you that they're paying a price per net mineral or net royalty acre, but they don't know how many net mineral or net royalty acres you have until they get you under contract and they do all the research and the title search to figure it out. I don't work that way because that would make me feel really uncomfortable. And I base offers on what is being produced, not like some sort of abstract unit of measure of property. So everybody's different. It doesn't mean that that is not an okay way to do it, but that introduces some subjectivity. So you may not be comfortable with signing a contract that you're going to sell, because how do you know? Like if they come back and they say, oh, we thought you had 50 net mineral acres, but it turns out you have 2, so we're only going to pay you this small amount and you're under contract to sell. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, you don't have the skills that they have, likely, to go and do a whole title search. So in that case, you might have to hire somebody. That can be really expensive. I just don't like to go down that path. So just keep it in mind. It's not a bad way to do it. There are a lot of companies that do that, but you have to have trust and a certain amount of tolerance for ambiguity if you go that route. Another thing to find out is, how long is the closing process? For us, we close almost everything in a week, sometimes 2 weeks, depending on how much research is needed. Sometimes I close in a couple of days, like if it's really simple. It varies, but it's really fast because I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I want to get this one done and then move on to the next one. And there's just no need to spend a lot of time. But there are a lot of companies that will take between 30 and 90 days to close on minerals. And the reason is because they want to go into a whole title search all the way back to the original land patent. And while that's really good to do, I only do that with a little bit higher value minerals. I don't do that with like some of the lower ones. It just doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't make time sense to do, so I don't always do it. But other companies will do that. Sometimes what they're doing during that time period is they're looking for a buyer, because they're not actually the end buyer. They're getting you under contract to sell your mineral rights, and then they're going and finding a buyer who's going to maybe pay, I don't know how much more. For example, let's say twice as much. So then they're making money by being a middleman, but you don't know that they're the middleman. So, and just because they have a longer time period doesn't necessarily mean they're doing that either. But it's just something to ask about and think about. Another thing to look into is whether they're keeping the minerals. Are they flipping them? Are they the end buyer? Just because they're flipping minerals doesn't make it unethical or anything. It's just that you would make more money selling your minerals to an end buyer than to somebody who is going to flip it and take that and be a middleman, basically, and take the extra money. So you may as well sell to the end buyer. It's up to you, really. It just depends on the situation and how comfortable you feel with the buyer. They may not disclose to you that they're going to do something with the minerals. Like, there's some companies that they have a strategy of everything they buy then goes on an auction. Some people have buyers in mind and they flip the minerals to a buyer. Some of them find a buyer before they'll close on your minerals because they don't have any money to pay without doing the transaction as a double transaction. So it's good to just kind of know what the buyer is like how are they funded? Some buyers are funded by private equity and venture capital. So they have a lot of funds and they just need to go and buy. And for me, I choose not to take private equity or venture capital because I don't want to be beholden to them. There's a lot of reasons, actually. So I'm self-funded. I use my royalties to buy more royalties. And there are certainly other buyers out there that are like that too. So one last little bit of advice is that if you received a letter for an offer for your mineral rights, it may be a market value offer, but it may not. So you may want to get another offer to just see, because I know that the letters I get, like I don't sell anything that I buy, but the letters that I get, some of them I'm like, wow, that's like, okay. And then some of them, I mean, it's appallingly low. It's just insulting. I mean, they all go in the trash because I don't sell anything, but there's a huge variety of buyers out there. And you're just better off to do some research about who your buyer is and make a decision based on, the offer price, the closing time frame, and how comfortable you are with that buyer, because you need to be really comfortable when you're selling your mineral rights and who you're selling them to. I hope this was helpful.